Take everything you've been told about achievement and set it ablaze right now. Those carefully crafted vision boards pinned to your bedroom wall, that meticulously detailed 5-year roadmap you sketched out during last January's resolution frenzy, those countless journal pages where you've been pleading with the cosmos to deliver your deepest desires, they're all contributing to your downfall. You've been conditioned to believe that reaching extraordinary heights requires a clearly defined target, some glittering prize positioned somewhere on the distant horizon that will make everything worthwhile. But pause for a moment and examine your existence with brutal honesty. Has this relentless pursuit of predetermined outcomes actually empowered you, or has it transformed you into a bundle of nerves, constantly anxious about whether you're moving fast enough, whether you're good enough, whether you'll ever actually arrive? Has this approach granted you genuine dominion over your circumstances, or has it reduced you to a servant endlessly chasing shadows you cannot catch, surrendering your agency to results that remain frustratingly beyond your influence? The Renaissance strategist Niccolò Machiavelli, perhaps history's most deliberately misinterpreted political theorist, never operated from a framework of hopes and aspirations. He never sat around manifesting outcomes or requesting authorization from the universe. What he possessed was infinitely more dangerous, infinitely more precise. He wielded a methodology, a system of operations that functioned regardless of circumstances. While goals are essentially fantasies masquerading as strategy, methodology represents a calculated siege, an unrelenting advance that cannot be stopped by temporary setbacks. If you're exhausted from the perpetual wishing, if you're tired of ascending ladders only to discover they've been positioned against entirely wrong structures, then you've reached the threshold of genuine transformation. But understand this clearly. What follows isn't about feeling better about yourself or finding your inner light. This is about absolute self-mastery through ruthless strategic thinking. CTA, Inscription. If you enjoy stories like this, consider subscribing. Most people who watch aren't subscribed yet. Topico 1. The Tyranny of Future Obsession. 500 Palavras. The overwhelming majority of human beings spend their entire conscious existence trapped in what philosophers call perpetual becoming, eternally suspended in a state of anticipation, constantly waiting for that career advancement, that perfect partnership, that financial breakthrough, that physical transformation. Their entire psychological framework exists in the realm of not yet. And because their identity resides in this future fantasy rather than present reality, they experience profound emptiness in their current moment. This creates a devastating fragility, a psychological brittleness that shatters spectacularly when life delivers its inevitable unexpected blows. When circumstances shift unpredictably, when fortune turns her wheel, these individuals collapse completely because their entire sense of self was mortgaged against a destination they hadn't actually reached. Machiavelli possessed a penetrating understanding that existence itself is fundamentally chaotic, an observation he articulated through the concept of fortuna, that violent, capricious river of fate that sweeps away everything not properly anchored. When you construct your entire psychological architecture on the unstable foundation of goals, you're essentially building your home on a floodplain, and when the deluge arrives, and history teaches us the deluge always arrives, you will be swept away without resistance. What I'm offering you today represents a fundamental paradigm shift, a complete reconstruction of how you conceptualize progress and power. I'm going to demonstrate how to abandon the precarious practice of building on riverbanks and instead teach you to become the river itself, to embody that force of nature that cannot be diverted or contained. I'm going to reveal how to replace the inherently fragile concept of goal-oriented thinking with the unbreakable Machiavellian principle of strategic positioning. When you genuinely internalize this transformation, the conventional definitions of success and failure become meaningless abstractions. These words lose their power over you entirely. You simply continue advancing, moving forward regardless of temporary obstacles. You transform into an inevitable force, unstoppable, not because you're fixating on a single point of arrival, but because you're expanding your influence and capabilities in every direction simultaneously, like water finding every possible pathway forward. However, this transformation demands a sacrifice that most people cannot stomach. You must deliberately terminate the part of your psyche that derives pleasure from fantasy, that experiences neurochemical rewards simply from discussing intentions rather than executing actions. You need to silence that childlike aspect of your consciousness that craves immediate validation and external rewards, and instead awaken the cold strategist within who demands nothing less than absolute power and control. The methodology I'm presenting is elegant in its simplicity, but brutally demanding in its execution. It requires you to reconceptualize your entire existence, not as a narrative with a predetermined happy ending, but as a battlefield where victory goes to those who can read terrain and maneuver effectively. On a genuine battlefield, hope is a luxury you cannot afford. You maneuver, you adapt, you advance. Let's begin this transformation together. Cliffhanger. But before you can truly maneuver, you need to understand why you've been setting goals in the first place. And the answer might disturb you more than you expect. CTA 1. Like. If this perspective is shifting something in your thinking, hit that like button. It tells me you're ready for more uncomfortable truths. Topico 2. The painful truth about your desires. 500 palavras. Why do you actually establish these goals for yourself? Ask yourself this question with complete honesty, stripping away all the socially acceptable answers. Why do you write declarations like, "I want to accumulate $1 million," or "I want to achieve happiness" in your journals? The uncomfortable truth is that you're operating from a place of profound psychological pain. You're experiencing deep dissatisfaction with your present circumstances, and so you construct an elaborate fantasy about some future state where everything feels better, where you finally feel whole. The goal itself isn't functioning as a navigational tool or roadmap. It's operating as psychological medication, a numbing agent that allows you to avoid confronting the reality that right now, in this present moment, you are not the person you wish to be. Machiavelli held deep contempt for hope as a strategic principle. He recognized it as a fundamental weakness, a surrender of agency. Throughout The Prince, he repeatedly implies that depending on time and circumstance to resolve your problems represents the hallmark of foolish thinking. He observed that human beings frequently deceive themselves by constructing mental images of reality as they wish it existed, rather than developing the courage to perceive it as it actually is. When you develop an obsessive fixation on a specific goal, you inadvertently create tunnel vision, a dangerous narrowing of perception. You stare with such intensity at the mountain peak that you completely fail to notice the cliff edge directly in front of your feet. You become psychologically rigid, and throughout nature, we observe that rigid structures inevitably break under pressure while flexible ones bend and survive. Reflect deeply on the last occasion when you failed to achieve a major goal you had set for yourself. What actually happened in the aftermath? You experienced a psychological crash, didn't you? You felt worthless, fraudulent, like you had been exposed as fundamentally inadequate. Why did you experience this devastating emotional response? Because you had wagered your entire sense of self-worth, your complete identity, on an outcome that existed outside your sphere of control. You effectively surrendered your personal power to a future that existed only in your imagination, giving circumstances and chance the authority to determine your value as a human being. Machiavelli advocated for a radically different approach, one that sounds harsh to modern ears, but contains profound wisdom. He introduced the concept of virtù, which represents a deliberate mistranslation, if you think of it as virtue in the moral sense we use today. This isn't about being ethically good or kind. Virtù represents effectiveness, capability, adaptability, and ruthless competence in achieving your aims. A Machiavellian practitioner never says, "I want to be wealthy." That phrasing represents passive desire, a wish thrown into the universe. Instead, a true Machiavellian declares, "I will systematically acquire expertise in persuasion and influence. I will master the mechanisms through which capital flows through economies. I will strategically position myself at choke points where money must flow through my hands to reach its destination." Can you perceive the fundamental difference? The first statement is begging the universe for a favor. The second statement describes a structural transformation of your relationship with reality itself. Cliffhanger. The goal setter sits around hoping luck smiles upon them. But what the strategist understands about necessity will change everything. Topico 3. From dreamer to architect. 500 palavras. The person fixating on goals operates from a framework of hope, constantly thinking, I hope this approach works out, or I hope circumstances align favorably. The strategist, by contrast, operates from the principle of necessity. When you make the decision to delete your goals entirely, you're not surrendering or giving up on achievement. Paradoxically, you're actually becoming serious for the first time in your life. You're examining your existence through a completely different lens and asking fundamentally different questions. Where are the genuine leverage points in my current situation? Where am I experiencing weakness or vulnerability? Where is my energy hemorrhaging uselessly into activities that generate no returns? Who are the specific individuals standing between me and the influence I seek? This represents the crucial shift from being a dreamer to becoming an architect of reality. The dreamer gazes upward at the sky, getting lost in beautiful visions of what might be. The architect examines the foundation, understanding that without solid groundwork, the entire structure will eventually collapse, regardless of how beautiful the blueprints appear. Right now, at this very moment, your foundation is developing dangerous cracks because you've spent too much time staring at horizons and not enough time examining what's directly beneath your feet. Stop looking toward distant futures. Look at your feet right now. Look at your hands. What exists within your immediate sphere of control at this exact moment? What system can you construct today, this afternoon, that makes your desired outcome not just possible, but inevitable? Machiavelli teaches us that final outcomes frequently exist outside our direct control. Fortuna spins her wheel according to her own whims, and we cannot stop her. But the preparation, the strategic positioning, the cultivation of capabilities, these remain entirely within your domain. And if your strategic foundation is genuinely perfect, even apparently negative outcomes cannot actually destroy you. You don't collapse when plans fail. You simply pivot with fluid grace. You adapt to new terrain. You continue advancing through different routes. This understanding represents the first step toward becoming psychologically untouchable. You must fall completely out of love with destinations and outcomes, and instead fall deeply in love with the siege itself, with the process of strategic advancement. Consider this carefully. When you love the destination, you suffer every moment you haven't arrived. When you love the siege, you're fulfilled every moment you're executing your methodology, because the execution itself becomes its own reward. We currently exist in an era characterized by deafening noise. Everyone broadcasts their intentions and movements constantly. I'm launching a business venture. I'm beginning a fitness transformation. I'm developing a new project. You post these declarations on social media platforms. You announce them to friends and acquaintances. You seek validation and encouragement before you've taken even the first concrete step. Machiavelli would recognize this behavior as strategic suicide, a guaranteed path to failure. He famously employed the metaphor of the lion and the fox to illustrate necessary duality. The lion possesses strength that frightens wolves, but the lion stumbles into traps because it relies only on power. The fox lacks physical strength, but the fox perceives the traps before stepping into them. Cliffhanger. To wield genuine power, you must embody both animals. But when it comes to your deepest ambitions, there's a specific reason why you must become the fox first. CTA 2. Share if someone you know needs to hear this message. Share this video with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is challenge their assumptions. Topico 4. The power of strategic silence. 500 palavras. When you publicly announce your goals, two psychologically devastating events occur simultaneously. First, your brain releases dopamine, providing you with the neurochemical satisfaction of achievement without you actually performing any of the difficult work required. You feel accomplished. You feel validated. And because you're experiencing these positive emotions, you lose the desperate hunger that actually drives execution. You've effectively tricked your own neurological system into complacency, giving yourself the reward before earning it. Second, and perhaps more dangerously, you create resistance and opposition in the external world. The moment you broadcast your intentions to the world, you inadvertently create enemies, individuals who experience jealousy, people who harbor doubts about your capabilities, those who subconsciously desire your failure because your success would force them to confront their own stagnation and inaction. You've provided them with a clear target, something concrete to undermine and attack. Machiavelli advised that a prince should never reveal true intentions until the knife is already in motion, until action is already underway. One must become accomplished at concealment and misdirection, he wrote. Delete your goals from your social media biographies. Remove them from casual conversations. Learn to move through the world in strategic silence. This principle extends beyond simple secrecy. It's fundamentally about energy conservation and power accumulation. Talking about actions leaks power into the atmosphere where it dissipates uselessly. Actually, performing actions generates and concentrates power. Imagine you're constructing something genuinely dangerous, something that will change your circumstances dramatically. Do you discuss this construction with everyone you encounter? Do you display the blueprints publicly and explain your methods? Absolutely not. You build in darkness and privacy. You work with meticulous precision, and the world only becomes aware of what you've built when it detonates, when the results become undeniable. Become the explosion, not the announcement. Instead of operating with goals, develop what I call a secret agenda. A goal is external and reactive. I want to receive a promotion. A secret agenda is internal and active. I am going to systematically make myself absolutely indispensable to every decision maker in my organization. I will gather leverage through relationships and information. I will force their hand when timing aligns most favorably for my advancement. Can you feel the substantial difference in psychological weight? The goal represents pleading. You're asking for something to be given to you. The agenda represents plotting. You're constructing circumstances where the outcome you desire becomes the natural consequence of the systems you've built. When you operate from a secret agenda rather than public goals, your entire presence shifts. You move through meetings and social interactions differently. You're not anxious about being seen or validated. Instead, you're observing. You're calculating. You're gathering information. You know something they don't know. You're playing a game they don't even realize has commenced. This creates a magnetic presence that others can sense, but not articulate. People can detect when someone is holding back significant power. It creates nervousness in them. It generates respect. They cannot explain why you seem so unshakably confident because you haven't told them anything. And that mystery, that unknown quantity, provides you with the upper hand in every interaction. Cliffhanger. Stop seeking applause for intentions and starve your ego, because when chaos inevitably arrives, only one type of person survives. Topic 05. Mastering chaos and becoming anti-fragile. 500 palavras. Here's where most people experience complete psychological breakdown. You establish a goal, you work diligently, you make sacrifices. Then life happens in all its unpredictable violence. You get seriously ill, the market crashes, your partner leaves. The goal becomes impossible. The goal setter collapses into despair. They cry out, "It's not fair," to an indifferent universe. They spiral into depression. They feel targeted by fate itself, as if existence has singled them out for punishment. The Machiavellian practitioner laughs at this drama because he understands that fortuna, luck, fate, chaos, whatever you want to call it, is a wild force that can be mastered through boldness. She is violent. She is unpredictable. She does not care about your carefully laid plans or your feelings of deserving better. If you're operating with rigid goals, chaos becomes your mortal enemy, something to fear and avoid. If you're operating with a Machiavellian system, Chaos becomes fuel, something you can actually utilize for advancement. Machiavelli wrote, "I judge that it is better to be impetuous than cautious, for fortune is a woman, and she lets herself be won more by the impetuous than by those who proceed coldly." This means you must become aggressive with reality itself. When your plan disintegrates, you don't stop moving. You attack the new problem with the same energy. Delete entirely the idea of having a plan A and a backup plan B. There exists only the objective and the terrain. The objective is power, freedom, control, resources, whatever you're genuinely pursuing beneath the surface goals. The terrain is whatever is actually happening right now, in present reality. If the terrain shifts, you don't waste energy complaining that your map has become inaccurate. You discard the map entirely and look at the actual ground in front of you. Let's say you lose your employment. The goal setter thinks, "My goal of becoming vice president is destroyed. I am a failure. My timeline is ruined." The strategist thinks, "The terrain has shifted. I am now a free agent. My necessity has increased. I will leverage this urgency to pivot into a higher leverage industry that I was too comfortable to enter before." Do you see? The event is identical. The interpretation and response are completely opposite. One person is defeated by reality. The other person uses reality as a weapon. This is the concept of anti-fragility that Nassim Taleb later articulated. You must position yourself so that you actually benefit from disorder and chaos. Don't build a glass castle that shatters when shaken. Build a fire. Wind blows out a candle, rendering it useless. But wind makes a fire burn hotter and consume more. When you're operating with goals, you're a candle. You're terrified of any disturbance. When you're operating with a power method, you're the fire. You want the wind, you welcome the challenge, you desire the chaos, because you understand it will only make you burn hotter and expand your reach. Ask yourself right now, if I lost everything tomorrow, would I know exactly what to do next? If the answer is no, you're dangerously attached to your current stability. You've become soft. You need to mentally rehearse the complete destruction of your life regularly. Cliffhanger. Machiavelli spent years in exile and torture, but what he did with that misery created something that outlasted empires. CTA 3. Subscribe. If you've made it this far, you're part of a different breed. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is just the beginning of what we're exploring together. Topico 6. Becoming your own tyrant and the 3 pillars. 500 palavras. We're constantly told to love ourselves, to practice self-care, to be gentle with our shortcomings and failures. And while there's a time for recovery and rest, there is never a time for weakness. Machiavelli posed a famous question: is it better to be loved or feared? His answer: it is best to be both, but if one must choose, it is safer to be feared than loved. Apply this principle to yourself, to your relationship with your own impulses and weaknesses. Do you love yourself? Probably. You allow yourself to sleep in. You permit yourself to consume junk food. You let yourself skip difficult work because you don't feel like it. That is love. And that love is producing mediocrity. You need to fear yourself. You need to fear the part of you that embraces laziness. You need to fear the part of you that settles for less. You need to fear the version of you that wakes up 5 years from now with nothing substantial to show for the time that passed. You must become your own tyrant, your own strict ruler. This sounds harsh to modern ears. It is harsh. But look at the results of gentle approaches. Look at where gentleness has led society. Weak bodies, weak minds, fragile emotions that cannot withstand any challenge. A Machiavellian ruler imposes order on chaos. You are the ruler of your own consciousness. But right now, your mind is experiencing a rebellion. Your impulses are rioting. They demand cheap dopamine. They want comfort. If you try to love them into submission, they will laugh at you. You must crush the rebellion with decisive force. Delete the goal of losing weight. Install instead the mandate of physical sovereignty. A sovereign does not negotiate with terrorists, and your cravings are terrorists holding your potential hostage. So if we delete goals entirely, what replaces them? What does the Machiavellian power method actually look like in practical application? It comes down to three fundamental pillars: positioning, leverage, and adaptability. Positioning means stop asking, "What do I want to achieve?" and start asking, "Where must I be standing?" If you want wealth, position yourself in the flow of money. Don't set a goal to make $10,000. Go stand physically and mentally where $10,000 is being exchanged. Learn the language of that environment. Adopt the customs of that place. If you want strength, position yourself in environments of resistance. Success is not a sprint to a finish line. It is a location. Move your body and mind to the location where success becomes the natural byproduct of your environment. Leverage means understanding that goals are linear. 1 + 1 = 2. Leverage is exponential. 1 + 1 = 10. Machiavelli didn't try to fight every battle himself. He used alliances. He used other people's armies. Look at your life. Are you doing everything with brute force? How can you use technology? How can you use other people's time? How can you use other people's money? Adaptability means waking up every day and reading the room. Read the market. Read your own energy levels. Be water. If the door is locked, go through the window. Never stop moving, but never be afraid to change the direction of movement. When you delete your goals and adopt this method, something shifts in your eyes. You stop looking desperate. You stop looking like you're chasing something. You start looking like you already possess something. People are drawn to certainty. You become the eye of the storm, calm, cold, watchful. This is the Machiavellian way. It is not for everyone. It is dark. It requires you to eliminate the part of you that wants to be saved. No one is coming to save you. Only you can save you through commanding, not wishing.